Hello and welcome to the Today's Homeowner Weekly Podcast. We're here to help you with the challenges we all face as homeowners. I'm Danny Lippert.
And I'm Joe Truini. And each week, Danny and I are here on the podcast to answer any and all home improvement questions.
And we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or comments at todayshomeowner.com/podcast.
Okay, Danny, let's get started.
Today's Homeowner Podcast is brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Here at the Home Depot, we want to help you do big, bigger, even epic. From small tools to earth-moving equipment, we've got your DIY covered, no matter how big or small. And at the Home Depot, you can rent and reserve online and pick up in store. The Home Depot app. How doers get more done.
This week, we help a few homeowners with problems they're having with painting a wood deck. What can you do once that paint starts failing? Also, ways to solve excessive moisture in your crawl space. Also, first steps in planting a roof over your patio, and how you know to use the right grout. What about a simple solution, Joe?
All right, Danny, when is the very best time of the year to plant the tree?
I would say right now, during fall.
Absolutely. You've been paying attention. Very good, Danny. That's right. Fall is the very best time to plant the tree. So this week's simple solution are 6 quick tree planting tips.
Okay, let's get started. Right now, we're going to go to a beautiful part of the country, Rhode Island, and Rebecca's on the line. Rebecca, welcome to the show, and tell us what's happening around your house here.
I have a solid colored stain pressure treated deck.
Okay.
And it's only been about a year that has been on there. And I go out there now and it's already peeling and splintering up. So I wonder what my options are. Do I have to go over that again once it's maybe pressure washed and with another solid color, or can I use something else?
Well, that's a good question, and it is a kind of a tough answer possibly, because the thing is, if there's anything peeling at all, it does have to be removed. So pressure washing may do that job for the most part, but you still may need to do some scraping, maybe with a putty knife or a paint scraper, and maybe even a little bit of sanding, just so that you get back to a really good, a solid surface that the paint will adhere to. The thing is with a semi-transparent stain, it's designed to soak into the wood. If you have material already on the wood, it's just not going to soak in. It's just not going to perform well. So I'm afraid you would have to go back with a good quality solid color stain. But if you prepare it well, it should last. I mean, it doesn't seem to last as long as the semi-transparent type stain, but you should be able to get it down enough. Buy a good quality one. And I would not go with, there's a product out there called Deck Over, and I have seen a lot of bad situations with that, so don't be tempted to go with something like that. I would just buy a good quality, solid color stain, and know that there will be a little maintenance, ahead for you on that.
Okay, thank you. That's my question, so thank you very much for answering that for me.
Okay, sorry we couldn't give you a magic bullet on that one, but it does take a little bit of time to prep that surface. But that's more important than anything, because you want it dry, you want it to be as good as possible for that solid color stain to work. So hopefully it won't be hard to get it prepped up, and you'll have a good success with it. And thanks for being a part of the show today.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, that's exactly why we don't recommend it, in terms of, the semi-transparent, and also, most people build a wood deck because the look of wood, even if it's treated and it's a green color and so forth, it starts graying out pretty quickly. And then if you, let it kind of etch out in the weather a little bit, and then you put the solid color stain on it, and it soaks into the pores of the wood. Once you understand the chemistry behind it, it really is the better way to go.
Yeah, solid color stain is too close to paint. I mean, the difference between semi-transparent and solid color stain is semi-transparent stain has a lot less pigment in it, where solid color stain is got a lot more pigment not quite as much as paint, but a lot more. And that's the surface that's blisters off, which is why we never recommend it. And the two other things working against Rebecca is it's way too easy to over apply solid color stain.
That's
because
right.
it's almost like a paint, right? You roll it on, you use a pad, whatever, you brush it on, and it's way too easy to put it on too thickly. And of course, all that pigment sits on the surface. And I can almost bet every dollar I own that she didn't, no one does this, back primes deck boards. So now you have moisture passing through the underside of this deck board and blistering off whatever's on the top surface. I mean, I'd hate to say it, but if this was my deck, I'd grind it all off, I'd strip it, I'd get down to bare wood and go with it semi-transparent stain. Otherwise, she's going to call us every 2 years with this same problem.
Yeah, it's possible that could happen. I'll tell you, a friend of mine told a story about how he, wasn't aware about this. He said the deck looked so bad that he didn't feel like the semi-transparent stain would work, so he went with solid color stain. And he was talking about how slick it was. That you get, a morning where you have high humidity or you get a little bit of rain. And he told me about this. One of the first, after he redid it, he let it dry a couple weeks. Then he had a little get together. He had about 6 or 8 people over at his house. And, of course, he was the cook, so they were all sitting around out there. He went inside. He had marinated the steaks in a nice little pan. And he came out, opened the door. He was talking with them, came out maybe a little bit too quick and slipped and fell. And the steaks went up in the air and landed on various places of the nicely painted deck. Well, now, if that had happened and your guest didn't see it, then you could kind of scoop them up real quick.
Well, the charcoal will burn that stain right off of the...
Yeah, but when your whole guest look at it and do like that, I didn't ask him what he did from there. I'll bet he said, I have some other steaks inside and took those back in.
Brought the same ones out.
Just like they would at a restaurant. So, so anyway, you got to be careful.
Well, Rebecca didn't mention how big this deck is, but of course the other option is to flip those boards over because they're probably not stained on the other side. I mean, that's a lot of work too, but unscrew them. Hopefully they're screwed down, not nailed down, but just flip them over and, then you have a nice clean surface to start with. And
carefully using some of the chemical strippers. There's a lot of strippers out there that are kind of more passive than some of the real caustic ones, and that's an option too. Though still a lot of work.
Yeah.
But
you have to pressure wash it after, put on this stripper. But
exactly. Hate to hear anybody having challenges like that. Hey, let's go to today's Homeowner Hotline. We're going to try to help Sherry in Mississippi with the question she has. Sherry, welcome to the show, and tell us what's going on at your house.
Okay, our house is on a crawl space, and we had a drainage problem, so water would get in when it rained. We somewhat fixed the drainage problem. It could be better, but the crawl space is still damp, and the smell from the crawl space is kind of leaking into our house. It's like a musty smell. So I've read a lot about encapsulating, and I was wondering what you thought about that. There's mixed reviews. And also, we laid LVT flooring down last year, and it's buckling in some places. So I don't know if it maybe caused from the moisture or how it was installed.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, this is something that a lot of people are dealing with. And, of course, everything to do with home improvement and your home is kind of opinion-based. So you will get a lot of different opinions. And, I've dealt with a lot of issues. I used to have a home inspection business years ago, so I've been under thousands and thousands of houses. And a lot of them do have problems that people don't even realize with moisture. You can have situations where your surface drainage is not sufficient and water is being fed under the house when it rains. You can have leaky pipes there that you never even know about that are contributing moisture to it. Or you may just live in an area where the ground has a lot of groundwater to it that will migrate up into the house. Now, the encapsulation, the thing that always bothered me about that, it seems like it's overkill when there's much simpler ways of doing it. Plus, in being in that environment and seeing this large dehumidifier, you've got a big piece of equipment in there that's running virtually 24 hours a day. There's something that bothers me about that you're that much electricity going into solving the problem when the vast majority of the time the problem with any excess moisture underneath is, one, Yes, make sure your drainage does not contribute water under the house by building up around the home so that it diverts the water elsewhere. Make sure your gutters are working right and your downspouts are working along those same lines and moving the water away from the house when it rains. And then the biggest thing is making sure you have adequate ventilation and the foundation vents that should be all the way around the house. A little rule of thumb there would be for every 150 square feet you have on your main floor, you need 1 square foot of venting. So let's say you have 1,500 square feet. You need 15 vents that are approximately 12 inch by 12 inch or the equivalent of. Most of them are more rectangular. And and then the biggest thing and the best thing is to lay plastic right down on the ground. Might want to weight it down with a little gravel here and there, but that just really prevents that moisture. And that's kind of a form of encapsulation that you're just preventing that moisture from migrating up into the house. You have the adequate ventilation, and 95% of the time, that takes care of any problem. The smell will go away and you'll be good. So do you know anything about the venting that you have around the perimeter of the home?
Well, I don't think that we have enough vents. I mean, our house is like, it's almost 1,900 square feet.
I see.
So we probably do not have enough vents. I mean, I don't think we do.
Yeah. I was just trying to do a little quick math here. 1,900 divided by 150. Yeah, you would need about, 1950 divided. Yeah, looks like about 13 vents that you would need evenly spread around the house. So that would be definitely something that that you would want to look at. Another thing, I mean, I dealt with a very severe situation one time that was down, this house was built on the river, and the soil was moist just about all the time. And I'll tell you what we did. We put the plastic down, we put a few extra vents in, and then on one of the vents, we added a little fan, what I call a ring fan. Looks something like you'd have on a radiator on your car. And you position that on the inside with a humidistat. So that way, it only ran when the humidity got up to a certain level. It would turn it on, and it would move that air out from underneath the foundation, and it did an amazing job in a very, very quick time. So you may check on that as well, but I would encapsulation, in my opinion, is the very last resort.
Well, I'm glad you said that because it's expensive.
Yeah. Oh, it really is. And I'll tell you, if you don't have the plastic on the ground, that would be the very first thing you do. Not a pleasant thing to put under there, but that alone will reduce the moisture considerably.
Well, I appreciate all your help, but you think that maybe the flooring issue could be caused maybe from the moisture also, or? Yes,
no doubt about it. It definitely is migrating up. And I'll tell you, Sherry, you might want to drop in at todayshomeowner.com because this is an issue that we have dealt with quite a bit. We always encourage our listeners to send in any little funny story that might have happened to them. A few years back, we did the funniest home improvement story, and we got all kinds of them. And recently, someone sent one in I thought I would share with you here because we talk about electrical work and how you really need to be comfortable when you're doing any electrical work around your house.
Right.
This came in from Therese. She says, the funniest home improvement story I have would have to be when I almost electrocuted my husband, John. Or should I call him Sparky at this time? He was helping me install a new light fixture, and as we were putting in the new bulbs, one cracked right in half. He grabbed a wrench and was trying to get it out of the switch when, unbeknownst to me, I went ahead and turned on the light switch to see how pretty the lights looked. After a few colorful words, I frantically pushed it down. Thank goodness Sparky is still around for me to be able to tell this tale. So, yeah, let's work together now when you're working on electrical there, and communication is pretty important when you have a switch on that end and electricity on the other end that you're working on.
Yeah, especially if someone has a wrench or a pair of pliers up inside the socket trying to get out that broken bulb. Yeah, you have to make sure that power's off. I mean, the power should have been off anyway before they started doing all this work. That's the very first step, right? Is turn the power out. If you're not sure it's off, don't work on it.
The old simple solution where you cut a potato in half and push the potato into the broken bulb and back it out is one way. But some people have said over the years that might not be the best because of the moisture in the potato. Another one that we tried one time, which worked pretty well, we all have the water bottle sitting around. You take a water bottle, an empty water bottle, and take a lighter and heat up the drinking part of it, the spout on it, and when it's still red hot, you stick it right to that bulb. It cools off immediately, and then you can use that actual empty water bottle to back out the fixture. I did that one time on a ceiling fan, and it worked great. So that's another way to do that a lot safer.
Good tip.
But still, don't let Therese get on the switch on the other end there.
Here at the Home Depot, we want to help you do big, bigger, even epic. From small tools to earth-moving equipment, we've got your DIY covered, no matter how big or small. And at the Home Depot, you can rent and reserve online and pick up in store. The Home Depot app. How doers get more done.
Time for our Best New Product segment, brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done. If you ever tried to tackle some simple plumbing like hooking up a bathroom sink, you know how frustrating it can be to find all the right parts to connect the sink to the drain. Not to mention getting the P-trap to line up right between the sink and the drain line. Well, that's what makes this simple drain rubber threaded P-trap drain kit so great. This flexible, continuous rubber pipe does it all, and the only tool you'll need to install it is a pair of scissors to cut it to length. The upper end connects to the tailpiece with a thumb screw clamp, and the lower end uses a threaded connector that slips over the pipe. The rubber is antimicrobial, so it's easy to clean, and because it's continuous, there are fewer opportunities for any leaks to occur. Plus, the flexibility means the trap can fit anywhere, and it's self-plunging. So if that interests you, you might want to head over to HomeDepot.com to secure yours today. That makes things a lot easier. I always wondered why they didn't use more of those. It still gives you the advantage of the P-trap.
Right.
That's has a number of different reasons for that. But here you just have the thumb screw and things like that. That's one of those things that if I was a plumber, I would have one of those handy all the time, because even if it's not a permanent solution, it certainly will address it right away. Casey in California sends an email in. I noticed that the soffits along the north side of my home are bowing downward and the paint is blistering off. Is there a way to fix them, or will they have to be replaced? And if I do replace the soffits, what do I replace them with? I think the ones I have now are made of masonite. So, Joe, I think she's actually talking about the overhang, the actual soffits themselves, and not any type of vent. And if it is made of masonite, which is a hardboard siding, there's a lot of failure on that particular material, and it could, and it's not very rigid. So, I think here several different things. You could remove all of that, and or you can always try to reattach it. Try to find any of the points where they have the bridging across the soffits that you could reattach it with nails or screws. You also have the option of vinyl siding to just cover it all up, or you could go with fiber cement siding that's a lot more rigid, or go back with the traditional AC fir plywood that you can back prime and install, and it's a lot more rigid. So there's a couple different options on this.
Yeah, I think rather than going through trouble of trying to repair it, masonite, it's probably not painted on the top surface, so it's absorbing moisture, it's bowing, it's not structurally very strong at all. So I would and it's the cheapest stuff to put up, which is probably why it was put up. But you're right, James Hardy, who makes fiber cement siding, actually makes a product called, I think it's called Hardy Soffit. And it's sold as vented and non-vented. The vented type obviously has holes in it. So I would definitely look at that. I think it's called Cedar Mill is the brand name of it. James Hardy Soffit Cedar Mill.
Yeah, that's a good option, and definitely probably want to get someone to help you with that one, maybe a contractor, because that's a tough one up on those ladders and scaffolding or whatever. That could be a dangerous little DIY project right there, and we try to always steer you on the things that you might want professionals to take care of. Let's go to Albert in California real quick with his email. Let's see. My deck was built in 2005, and the builder painted it without first applying a primer. Within 6 months, the paint started flaking and cracking off, and if that wasn't bad enough, I believe he used the wrong nails to fasten the 4x4 posts to the wood and concrete foundation block. Is there a way to strip the paint off the wood decking? We had a call very similar to this earlier. Yes, there is a way to strip the paint off, and you can use a combination of chemical strippers to apply and to where the paint will start bubbling, and then scraping, sanding, neutralizing. In other words, it's an awful lot of work to strip it all off. It can be done. The best thing is never to apply any paint to a deck.
I was just saying the same thing. Albert has not been paying attention because we have said never paint a wood deck, I mean, unless you really like scraping paint and repainting every couple of years, there's no point in doing that. And again, this might be a case of, maybe it's a lot of work, but if possible, unscrew all those boards and flip them over.
That's true.
Assuming the underside's not painted, which I bet it's not. Mm-hmm. Because can you imagine trying to scrape and blister paint off and scrape in?
I know, a lot of challenges with that.
Please don't paint decks.
Right. In a lot of homes, the garage is one of the first things people see when they arrive at your home. It may even be the entrance that most family and friends use to enter your home. So go ahead and make your garage a little more welcoming. And it doesn't have to be complicated. First of all, clean up the clutter. Get rid of anything that you really don't need. Install some shelves or cabinets to get things up off the floor, and put a coat of paint on the walls. Now, that's easy enough, but for many, the big challenge is that ugly garage floor. Now, you can cover it with stain or paint to clean it up, but the first time those hot car tires roll over it, the coating will begin to peel, leaving it uglier than it was before. So, for a tougher garage floor coating that's also very pretty, I'd like to suggest you use Terrazzo Decorative Granite Resurfacer from Deitch Coatings. This stuff is actually formulated with real stone, so you're not just slapping paint on the concrete, you're covering it with stone, so it can withstand water, salt, chemicals, and scrapes and scratches. But most importantly for your garage, the real stone coating resists hot tire pickup, so it still looks good after you pull that minivan in there a few hundred times. Now, Terrazzo also handles freeze and thaw conditions very well and resists mold and mildew. And the kicker is that it's just as easy to apply as paint or stain, and you can complete the entire project in just one weekend. Now, you also may want to add track-safe anti-skid sealer, and the garage floor becomes even safer. And when you're done, your garage will have a granite-like finish that lasts for years. And you can find out more information about this coating and other coatings available for your garage by going to DeitchCoatings.com, and that's DAICH Coatings.com. I have it in my garage and absolutely love it. This is the time of the show where I kind of push it over to Joe and let him share with us a simple solution. Joe, it's all yours.
All right, Danny, fall is the perfect time to plant trees, so I thought I'd share a simple solution on 6 quick tips to successfully planting any tree. First, you want to make sure you don't dig the hole too deep or too shallow, which is the most common problem. So you want to measure the height of the root ball. But the important thing is you have to use a little cultivator or trowel to remove some of the dirt from the top of the root ball to expose what's known as the root flare. That's this section where the trunk starts to spread out into the individual roots. So you measure that, then you subtract 2 inches from that height. That is how deep you need to dig the hole, because if you bury that root flare, the tree won't grow as healthily. So then when you start to dig the hole, spread plastic tarp next to where you're digging and shovel the dirt onto the tarp. This just makes it a lot easier to remove the dirt off the grass when you want to put it back in the hole. And then dust the hole with a little superphosphate, which you can get at any hardware store or home center. Just helps promote a healthy root system. Okay, so now you place the tree in the hole and have a helper rotate the tree as you stand back, because believe it or not, every tree has what they call a face, meaning a side of the tree that looks really nice. And you want that ordinarily facing the road. And then once you got it in position, remove the wire basket, use bolt cutter or something like that to remove the wire basket. And then, and this is also important, use the cultivator, like a 3-tine cultivator, to scratch that root ball to loosen up that dirt, because what you're doing is exposing all those tiny roots that'll help the tree grow quickly. All right, now spread some superphosphate and some 3-4-3 fertilizer into the soil pile, mix it up well, shovel it around the root ball, and then once the hole is full, form a little 6-inch high curb of soil around the tree, fill it with water, and once that water soaks into the soil, then you can spread out that 6-inch wide curb just to spread out the dirt, put a little mulch on top to seal in that moisture, and then water it. Now, the easiest way you should water it like every day for at least 6 weeks, but a way to do that without having to drag the hose out every day is use drip irrigation bags. If you've not seen these, are just big plastic bags that have little tiny holes on the bottom, and you just tie them to the tree and you fill them with water. And over the course of, depending on the size of the bag, a day or two, it very slowly drips out water so the tree is always hydrated.
Now it's time for our podcast question of the week, and we would encourage you to send us one. If you have any question at all for Joe and I, you can send it to todayshomeowner.com/podcast. Now this one came from Rustin in Missouri. He said, I was told you cannot install a storm door in front of a fiberglass front entry door. Is this a true statement? Well, Joe, you can tell that Rustin has gotten several different opinions on that. And I've heard that it can enhance the heat. I've heard this really on metal doors or anything, that air chamber between the door face and the storm door can get very, very hot and can cause problems with it. But I'm not really sure I've ever seen an actual example of that.
Yeah, there has been a history of problems with, like you said, not only fiberglass doors, but any door that has a plastic trim around the lights, around the windows. So if you have a door, whether it's steel or fiberglass, there's usually a plastic trim around the windows that are in the entry door. Mm-hmm. And I have seen, now this has gone back probably about 15 years, a door at least 15 or 20 years old, that when you put a storm door in front of it, if it's not a vented storm door, meaning you can't open the windows a little bit on the storm door, that heat will build up. And I've seen it actually melt and warp that plastic molding.
Oh, boy.
Because when they made the plastic, they didn't think about that on the entry door. But they've since corrected that problem. It's made out of a different material. As far as the door itself, the fiberglass door, I don't think it's an issue at all. But I have a steel door, and I have a storm door I put up with all glass, and I vent it just to let some air. I open the bottom sash just like a 1/4 inch or half inch, and I lower the top, and it lets that hot air out, because you really don't want that heat building up. If nothing else, it's going to deteriorate the paint that's on the door. So, but the fact that that's a fiberglass doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cause any more damage than any other door.
Right, exactly. So just making sure that during those extreme times where it's really getting hot, to just vent it just a little bit to get that heat out of there, you probably won't have a problem at all. Again, if you'd like to send us a question, we'd love to get it. Just go to todayshomeowner.com/podcast. We appreciate all those great reviews that you continue to write for us. And if we can feature a particular subject on this podcast that you'd like to hear, all you have to do is send us that note. Again, todayshomeowner.com/podcast. I'm Danny Lipford, along with my buddy Joe Truini. Thanks so much for listening to this Today's Homeowner Podcast.